The last shift, Emily Parker wiped down the counter for the last time that night. It was 8:45 p.m. The dinner rush was over and McDonald's was preparing to close. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily under the flickering streetlights. It was midwinter and the night was deathly quiet. She pulled off her visor, stuffed it into her bag, and waved goodbye to her co-workers as she stepped out into the cold. Her breath curled in the frigid air. The walk home wasn't long, just 10 minutes through the empty streets, but tonight something felt off. As she turned the corner past the bus stop, she got that strange sensation, the kind that prickles the back of your neck. She was being watched. The first sign. She shook the feeling off and kept walking, adjusting her scarf. The street was nearly deserted, except for a lone street lamp buzzing overhead. Then she heard it. Crunch. The sound of footsteps in the snow. She stopped. The sound stopped. Her heartbeat picked up, but she forced herself to keep moving. Probably just her imagination. Probably. After a few more steps, she heard it again. Crunch. Crunch. Closer this time. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She turned her head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse over her shoulder. Nothing. The street was empty. She walked faster. The shadow that followed. Emily reached an intersection where a dimly lit convenience store stood. She debated stepping inside, waiting a few minutes to shake the uneasy feeling. Then, in the reflection of the store window, she saw it. A tall, shadowy figure standing at the edge of the street. Not moving. Not walking. Just standing there. Her breath hitched. When she turned around to get a better look, it was gone. The street was empty again. A wave of nausea rolled through her stomach. Was she losing it? The stress of work, exhaustion. Maybe she was just imagining things. She shook her head and hurried forward. The empty footsteps. The footsteps started again, but this time they weren't behind her. They were all around her. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, her fingers numb from the cold. She turned on the flashlight and swung it wildly around her. Nothing. But when she turned the light back toward the sidewalk ahead, the figure was there, standing in the middle of the street, directly under the dim glow of a street lamp. No face, no features, just a dark silhouette, too tall, too thin. Emily's mind screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to move. The air around her grew thick, heavy, as if the night itself had come alive. Then the figure tilted its head and took a step forward. The final stretch, Emily bolted. Her apartment was just a few blocks away. If she could just make it inside, lock the door, she'd be safe. Her footsteps pounded against the pavement. Her lungs burned from the freezing air. She risked a glance over her shoulder. The figure was closer, but it wasn't running. It was gliding, like a shadow stretching toward her. Her keys! Where were her keys? She fumbled through her bag as she reached her building's front entrance. Her hands shook violently as she jammed the key into the lock, her breath coming in short, terrified gasps. The door wouldn't open. She yanked, twisted, and then silence. She turned around. The street was empty. No figure, no sound, no footsteps. Just the soft hum of the streetlight buzzing above. Her chest heaved as she pushed the door open, slamming it shut behind her. She was safe. The endless night, Emily leaned against the door, her body shaking. After a long moment, she forced herself to breathe. It was nothing. Just stress. Just exhaustion. She was safe now. She turned on every light in the apartment. The bedroom, the hallway, even the bathroom. Every room glowed with warmth. The fear still clung to her, but she told herself it was over. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the door, her fingers gripping the blanket. She couldn't sleep. What was that thing? Hours passed. She checked her phone, 3:27 a.m. Her eyelids were heavy, but every time she started to drift off, she imagined the crunch of footsteps in the snow. At some point, exhaustion took over. She lay back, the light still on, her eyes fluttering shut. And then, tap, tap, tap. Emily's eyes snapped open. The sound was coming from her window. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Slowly, stiffly, she turned her head. The curtains were drawn, but she could see the faintest shadow of movement behind them. She swallowed, forcing herself to breathe. It was just the wind. Just the wind. Then, from the other side of the room, the closet door creaked open. Just an inch, and a whisper, barely audible. "You left the light on." The bulb flickered, and the room went dark.